Lovely. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to webinar number 35. I'm Niti Daftari from Transforming Faces here on behalf of the Circle of Cleft Professionals. Our topic for today is locally managed electronic medical records for comprehensive cleft care. As always, we will be having simultaneous interpretation in Spanish today as well for the entire duration of this webinar, for which we have Ben and Eva who have joined us from Chile. At the bottom of your screen, you will see an interpretation button. If you would like to attend the rest of this webinar in Spanish, please click on that button and select Spanish. If your bandwidth allows, please keep your video on. If you haven't already, it would be lovely if you could introduce yourself to the group and tell us where you're from while also displaying your full name on your Zoom screen. At any point during the presentation or discussion, feel free to type in your questions or comments or to use Zoom reactions. Do keep yourself muted when not addressing the group. And finally, when we open for discussion, you can share your thoughts either via chat or on video by raising your hand. This is how our webinar will flow for today. We begin with a quick COCP update, followed by a presentation for the first half hour by Professor Youri Anastassov from Bulgaria and Professor O.P. Kharbanda from India. This will then be followed by questions and discussion for the remaining half hour. We have three core objectives at the COCP. Our aim is to facilitate networking and collaboration amongst cleft professionals to communicate the impact and learning that's happening within cleft care and to support the growth of local teams in implementing comprehensive care. Our members are spread across the globe. We now have over 700 members, over 700 cleft professionals from over 80 countries within our network. A shout out to these 11 international charity organizations who have come together to make the COCP and all of its activities possible. Over to you, Hugh.
Thanks, Niti. Again, my name is Hugh Brewster here in Toronto. On behalf of the Circle of Cleft Professionals, welcome. We're glad that you've made it today. And I'm really excited about today's topic, locally managed electronic medical records and within a comprehensive cleft care structure. I mean, this is something that is at the top of many people's minds. How do we move forward in an evidence-informed approach? How do we make sure our teams are getting the best out of our speech therapy or our pediatric dentistry or orthodontic care? How do we make sure we're following up well on surgeries? Dr. Camaro from Northern Argentina was sharing this morning about having a colleague sit in on her first cleft palate surgery. How are we going to follow along with those patients and make sure that the outcomes that we're hoping are actually realized and that the patient is able to go on and live a full life at school, in the community, and so on, without having access to that data? And so there's a place definitely for the kinds of databases that NGOs like Transforming Faces, Smile Train, Operation Smile, et cetera, use to be able to make sure that this accountability is happening and that good processes are followed. But today we're really delighted to have two experts, people who in their own regions and their own contexts have decided to build a locally managed and locally developed electronic medical record system so that that team can have access to those kinds of that kind of data going forward and learn from it. So today I'm delighted, as Niti mentioned, to have Professor Youri Anastassov and Professor O.P. Kharbanda to move us towards a discussion of what it means to have an evidence-informed approach through electronic medical records. And so today we're structuring a little bit more like a conversation. I've got a series of prompts that I'll read out. And very kindly, Professor Youri and Professor Kharbanda have prepared some responses to walk us through a little bit of what led them to develop this EMR system, what are the components of it, and then what are some of their hopes for the future. So Professor Youri is no stranger to many of you. He's from the Medical University of Plovdiv in Bulgaria and part of the movement called Association for Facial Anomalies, or the acronym ALA. And this EMR work for him goes way back, even before 2013. It's been something that's been a huge passion. If you saw him in Edinburgh, you'll know that he'll talk very gladly about all the developments and processes that he's involved with in terms of this. And so we're delighted to share that today. We're also delighted to have Professor O.P. Kharbanda, who many of you may have met in Cleft 2022 in Edinburgh as well. He's from Ramaya University of Applied Sciences in Bengaluru, India. He's a principal investigator of the Pan-India Cleft Task Force. And this IndiCleft, multidisciplinary cleft data recording system, he'll walk us through, what has that been like to develop and what are some of the hopes for the future? So without further ado, let's jump in. Remember, anytime you have questions, feel free to use the chat. We'll spend some time as usual at the end to think about your own context. How does what Professor Kharbanda and Professor Youri have learned apply in your own context, and what are some next steps that you can take to move your team forward in an evidence-informed approach? So, Niti, our first slide. What I wanted to know, first of all, just quickly from Professor Youri and then Professor Kharbanda, what made you build this EMR? What is it that drew you to say, aha, this is something that we need to invest in, a locally managed database for our patients? Professor Youri, why don't you kick us off?
Hello to everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I would like to say that we have been slowly becoming the only center in our country. So this was the start in 25 years ago or more. And then we moved to be the unique center. After this period, we had to build a system with a network in the country, trying to have a contact with our patients and the specialists that are in the country. So we have been trying to develop a center in our start, but from 2008 we start to have building a network thanks to partners that help us to develop this network in the country. So can you move, Niti, the next? Yes, so we have built a network for parents, a network for feeding specialists to help for feeding, then to speech therapists and orthodontists. So this network required a system that could help us to connect with them, and not only to register the information that is in our center, but also the treatment done in the country. So the next slide.
Thank you, Professor Youri. So in this case, many of us think about a database, a computer terminal that we can access in our team at one center. But for Alla's example, or for your work in Bulgaria, you're talking about having a team that's dispersed across the whole country. And so patients, professionals, and also these specialists that all need to be able to have access wherever they are to some of these patient records to be able to work as a team. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and the only situation that could give us this chance is to have a web-based system that could help us to have the contact with the network and the patients.
Great. So a way of building in all these diverse people who are working across the country closer to patients' homes, and then having them feel connected into that central treatment plan. And obviously, Bulgaria was a little further ahead than some countries in terms of having that web access and the IT support and technical support that was required.
Yes, I will explain later that that happened because we built a project that was supported by the university and the government for 4 years. That was a database and a typical register. But then we moved to another stage that I will explain later.
Perfect. That's a great overview. Gives us a start. Totally different context. Professor Kharbanda, tell us a little bit about, for you, what made you invest in this EMR process? What was the pressing need that caused you to invest in this?
Actually, the one with India, or rather with me, it started with a very different context. And this context was that because we have a huge burden, and the hospital where I worked is a tertiary care hospital, we were getting patients half operated, less operated, unoperated, and things, complicated cases. So we thought, let us try to develop some kind of a status. What is the status of cleft care in our country? And for that, we have to gather a huge data. I mean, this includes photographs, speech samples, ENT examination, orthodontic, genetics, and a lot of things. And then they have to be entered or recorded at different locations in the country. India is a big country with large population, with different languages, but English is, of course, common for all medical hospitals. So this made us think, can I have the next slide, to take up this project where, and this was funded by Indian Council of Medical Research. And this went into different phases, like we had to test the protocol, then we had to do in Delhi, like 3 centers, and then we had to do Penn Center, different countries. So now there was a need that if we have to record the data from entire country, it has to digitize. It cannot be physical. It cannot be transported from one state to another, big distances, north to south, east to west. So we created a system where we pre-agreed on what is a standard. And that is what it took us the longest time to standardize it. Can I have the next one, please? And to do that, we created this system. Essentially, it records all kind of data, and it may be like photographs or X-rays, speech, study model photographs or study models digitized, and also it has the history part, which included a significant part of the mother and the parents' economic status, nutritional status, as well as the possible factors which could have caused cleft. So we are not just looking at the surgical or follow-up, we are also looking at what caused cleft. And we had also located families where more than 3 generations, up to 3 generations have cleft. And for those patients, we had to take samples from the mouth and the buccal scrap, because we wanted to do a study on their genes, the progression. So this was the objective of this creating. So we had no choice but to create a IndiCleft tool. And then in this, we added also the public, which I come to know that it has an institutional access and public access. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Kharbanda. So I'm hearing a common thread between these very different contexts, Eastern Europe and the Indian subcontinent. I mean, one definitely is that need to move beyond physical paper, right? We can't have
That's right.
A way
That's
of moving forward if people are still only relying on their written notes, handwritten, etc. So India also in a position to be able to capitalize on some technology, to be able to share that. And then I'm hearing from you, Professor Kharbanda, in addition, being able to track time over generations, that sense of what the genesis of cleft is in families. Again, very hard to track if you're only on paper and pen.
That's
so
right.
Taking advantage of some of the additional information that can be easily attached to a patient's file, that becomes part of the motivating factor for you to work on the IndiCleft tool.
That's right.
Excellent. Well, let's hear a little bit more about the solutions you've come up with. Now that we've heard, we're moving away from paper, we're being able to have more data tracked and follow along for that longer term. Youri, tell us a little bit about what's been built and what's been refined since 2013.
Yes, the start was thanks to a project that was funded by the Ministry of Education and with a partnership between ALA, our parent and specialist organization, and the University of Plovdiv. And it was for a short period, showing that we are able to make this registration, the web-based system, but then we moved to a different level. So this is our last vision of the web-based register. So in this one, we have each specialty has a special different view of the page of so each specialist have a different access. So it's based like in Facebook with a post on the wall of the patient. And in this post, we can open and see in details pictures, videos, and consultations and therapy of the patient from the start of the therapy and the start of the registration of the patient until the last one. It's completely voluntary. And we have succeeded to have the protection of personal data. All these details have been not so complicated to have the access and the validation. And each post could be a comment, but we are counting much more on consultation and therapy to have standardized answers that could be used for statistical analysis later.
Right. So Professor Youri, first of all, we're actually seeing live screenshots of the tool. And,
yes.
And your team has been inspired a little bit like Facebook, if some of us are familiar with that, of having a space that's for each patient where patients can upload lots of pictures or samples. And then for statistical analysis later, you're saying that specialists are encouraged to choose between a number of different comments or different treatment plans so that you can study that later and see what the patient's trajectory was. Is that right?
Yes. It was crucial to make not comments, because comments are a free text.
Right.
And comments are used only for have a short exchange of information with parents or with other specialists. But we have get different type of posts like consultation, start of therapy, end of therapy, that are important to measure the work that is done by each specialist.
Right.
And
so
also,
you're building both that sense of a communication tool between the family and the specialist, which is maybe by free text or whatever, but also you're building it with that idea of being able to analyze the data later on by standardizing some of the responses.
Yes, and it's different for each specialty. So we have to build for each specialty different type of panels that could first only standardized information, and then we are going to have scores. Scores are the next stage, but it's typical for our electronic medical record that the patient is free to add a lot of pictures. That could be pictures from the birthday party. So this is really the patient are the owner of their own files.
Right.
So we encourage the family to write us and to send pictures as much as they can. And we are measuring the efforts of the family to be part of the team, adding information for the clinical part of the data that is related to the patient. So the specialist should use standardized pictures, if possible, good quality pictures, but not always. This is so important. It's more important to standardize the sample, speech sample. It's important to have good pictures, but it's also important to have any information from the parents that could be used for measuring the follow-up of the patient.
Great. So, Professor Youri, you're talking about what we might think of as, oh, this is just the back office, details, but actually, in the way that you're thinking about an EMR, it becomes a patient engagement tool for the family to say, oh, you can be active, as you mentioned, active part of the team by uploading samples, by writing comments, and ensuring that your child is completing their action plan, for whatever the treatment plan should be. Very interesting.
Yes, and we have a system for contact between us and the parents. Actually, we are changing this system with a small program that will be like an icon on the desktop or the mobile that could inform you that somebody has written to you a message. But actually, from the start, we have been using emails. But often the emails are having a lot of spam, so it's maybe not the right way for the functioning of this. But we are using a lot of reminders and tasks that could be general tasks for the age period, and also tasks concretely for certain specialists. We can address a question and a task to a specialist that should see this message, especially for him, and with a deadline to answer.
Great. So, thank you, Professor Youri. That's really helpful that you're also addressing one of these common concerns around the world of how do we not make sure that patients and their families are not lost in the shuffle? Because as we know, comprehensive cleft care is a long journey. So how do we make sure that patients are still in contact, even if they're not seeing you regularly, at different points? There's that sense of, oh, we should be checking in based on these reminders. We should have that engagement tool to make sure that we're not losing track of our patients. I think that's really helpful.
Yes, actually, we are developing a system that will measure the active parents that are really putting attachments with videos and pictures.
Very good.
Because there is a lot of families that are only registered, but they never open the electronic record. They are changing their phone numbers. So this is a big problem to engage the parents. So we have a library and a training of parents that are added in this electronic record. So this training is essential to motivate the parents to use the system and to be active in the treatment protocol.
Very good. Well, we'll get ahead to some challenges and solutions in a second. In a totally different context, Professor Kharbanda, give us a quick sketch of what IndyCleft involves in terms of its EMR.
Can I have the next slide? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So when we wanted to develop this, it was more of a research tool to begin with, and we could meet gather different specialists, and this is the group of specialists 13 specialties from different diverse institutions in the country with diverse backgrounds like public health experts, statisticians, psychologists, pediatric geneticists, computational informatics, because they were required to know what is feasible or not feasible. And with these 22 institutions, 13 specialities and 42 experts together have to reach to a consensus what to record and what not to record. And if we have to record, how to record. So what would be the parameters to record? So everything had to be standardized. So it went through different, now we have version 20 actually, what we call it V3 now. So it went through a process of validation 19 times before we could finalize what would be our tool. Now in this tool, we have personal identification details, family details and psychology, antenatal history, medical history and examination, dental and orthodontic examination, then exam of the cleft at primary repair, hearing and ENT, speech, genetic history, and dental and other study models. And this also, there are few things which are not mentioned here. For example, when we say dental and orthodontic history and examination, this includes records, which may include x-rays and photographs. And for speech, it could be an audio file. So we begin with, first we did a pre-pilot work, which was done within the hospital where I worked in the institute. Then we had 3 different hospitals with diverse backgrounds in the Delhi. So 2 were public, 1 was the government, 2 public, 1 private hospitals. And we analyzed that data, and based on that, we went for the multicentric. So what you see here is the 3 hospitals in Delhi only. And from there, we went across the country. Can I have the next one slide? And from this, we then created this web-based tool to upload the data, which could be uploaded from anywhere in the country. But of course, web connectivity is required. So if you cannot upload instantly, back please, back previous slide. So there was also an option you could record on the hard thing on the file, and you could upload it later, because electricity and connectivity could be sometimes a problem. So it will tell us about the team. It will give quick links about the American Cleft Palate Association. We could add also now Circle of Cleft Professionals. So all quick links are there, and the events and this login is only meant for the professionals. So those persons who are registered to be part of this research project, they could only log in. They are to be given rights to log in. Next, please. The other part is which is open to public. Now, this means that this part is where if they want to say, click this antenatal pregnant mother, they would know what a pregnant mother should do or don't do during pregnancy to avoid cleft, how to feed, what are the issues in the speech when they should address. So this particular ring provides the patient information for all ages and from in a sequential manner. And on the click of button that will pop up. So this is a screenshot, so it cannot pop up now. And these are the participating institutions, major ones, which were involved in the project. So it has two components, major components, the public and the research component, but the data was absolutely standardized. It took us about 4 years to get people meet together, come to a consensus. Is there anything more you want to know about it? Yeah, so the features are like this one will show how the screen would look like. And then there are proformas like 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like that. So if it doesn't say, I am an ENT person, so I click on my proforma on ENT, I fill up my form. The speech person fills up speech forms. The plastic surgeon fill up his data. And so all specialists and the data in the beginning, like the history, etc., will be done by a common man, common dentist or a medical healthcare professional. So this data is huge. Now, this is one of the problems which we have encountered is that because it was a research data, it was not meant to be used as a routine data for the patient's treatment. Rather than there is a strict standardization of every parameter which we have to do, that how to take the photograph, how to record the speech, how to grade, and all those kind of stuff. Next, please. So, for example, you could upload the pictures and you could also, to some extent, crop it. And, there are tools which are all common tools to enhance the photograph. Like here, you choose the file and you upload. So that is how it looks like. And there may be external photographs or X-rays, or depending upon what you want to upload, there is an icon to do that. Next one, please. Then this would give some analytics and graphics. For example, you could have pictures or images would have a cropping feature or enhancement features. You could get the real report in terms of like how many patients are today. So it could be a live report and these many patients and their analysis. If I want to know how many patients in which age group, it will tell me. And in which age group, how many patients have surgery at 6 months or 1 year or 9 months, it will tell you how many males. So it was more of a, you can say, a data which could be seen more scientifically and also recorded scientifically. So it, and from there now we have to bring it to the patient care system. So in case of like Youri, he's starting from patient care system. We started the other way around. We started with the recording and now we are bringing this to the, adopting it as a patient care tool. I think you could also generate, record the report in Excel. And I mean, it's very dynamic and it's very powerful tool. Next one, please. Like you could have a live dashboard on the graphic. You could want to see in data or you want to see in graphic. So everything is available for you to. Administrator has the you can say the authorization to do it. Everybody is not allowed to do it because there are levels of authorization, but data entry operator can do. And the security issue is the biggest issue, which we will talk later. So next one, please. And this is like how you could generate an Excel report. You could print it or you could save it as a PDF file. These are the features of the IndiCleft tool.
Great. Thank you, Professor Kharbanda. So we're getting a sense both of the philosophy or the general thrust, starting with a research tool and moving towards a patient management tool, as well as a couple glimpses of just the practicality, which as anyone who's dealt with an EMR knows, it's all about forms and being able to draw that data out. And then, as Professor Kharbanda mentioned, be able to see it in a way that you can make use of it. So those dashboards can be very helpful.
Dashboard is very helpful, actually.
Yeah, thank you. Professor Youri, just very quickly then, so you started building, this has obviously been built over a long time. What are some key steps you did in terms of getting people to use it? It's one thing to spend a lot of time with IT professionals. I know they're your best friends, but once you built it, how do you get people to actually use this tool and adapt their procedures of how they want to treat patients and record what they're doing?
Yes, from the start, we have been using this like records of data not measuring the outcomes, just having the pictures. But then we realized that it's important not only to record the information, but trying to use different age periods to make the abstract of the outcomes in different in the different specialties. So this was a period that we had to rebuild again our consultations and to add scores. And the last score of the consultation is transported directly to our new post, that is a global evaluation. So we can check the last consultation, and from then you can make this overview of the outcome in this new post. So this new post in the age 5, 7, 8, 10, it's possible that the score can change between 5 and 7 and between 8 and 10. We're taking the last score for the valid, but it's important also to have this global evaluation because we are measuring the number of surgeries, the years of speech therapy, years of orthodontics. So in this global evaluation, we are trying to put all the important information and to be very severe on the prognosis, just to have an alert that could be important for the parents and for the specialists that something is happening, that we should pay attention to the future of the patient.
Great. Now, Professor Youri, I just want to make sure we have time. We've got lots of people gathered to ask questions. So let's just move on a bit. I think that's given us a good stop that this tool has to be dynamic. It has to draw people's attention to these serious events according to this global evaluation. Is there anything else you want to share briefly before we hear briefly from Professor Kharbanda about the implementation?
No, it's just that there are so many aspects that are included in this part that we are just trying to combine this data and these scores with the psychosocial factors, trying to see which patients are dropped out from following. So there are many tools that are coming from this global evaluation, because this is the moment to realize that something is happening. And it was difficult to see that in the past when we have only comments or consultation trying to follow the patient.
Great, thank you. So we're hearing it's a double-edged sword. One is the process of the EMR is dynamic. You can always add new things to it and continue to incorporate new emphases, like you're mentioning, going from just comments to these global evaluations or weaving through psychosocial. On the other side, the challenge is that it's never finished. It's always a work in progress. And so you're always building it out. Very helpful. Professor Kharbanda, can you give us just a couple ideas of how you've implemented it so far?
Yeah, I would say that this was a tool which was a very to be considered first of all, the patient's privacy, data privacy comes into picture. So we have to have those people employed with us who are people with high integrity. The second thing comes the consent. So we have to take consent from the parents that this will be used for this purpose and it will not be misused for any other purpose, because here the patient's privacy becomes very important. So having sorted out these two issues, then data entry happens at different places in the country, and these people who do data entry have to understand the language between the doctor and the technical word and the data entry, they have to be aligned. So if I say it is an overjet 10 millimeter and for that grade is 2, he has to remember by heart that he has to click grade 2 or things like this. So the challenge was that and there are different types of data because some data is qualitative, some is quantitative, some is in the form of pictures and some is in the forms of audio files. So it is multitude of data. So to handle this multitude of data, you need to train the doctors as well as the technicians as well as the data entry operators to be on the same pace. And this was the biggest challenge, I think.
Right. Niti, can you skip ahead? Just, I think Professor Kharbanda has got a couple further challenges. So just we'll come back to Professor Youri in a second. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, I know you had some training you've talked about already. Just you want to briefly summarize a couple other challenges. I know everyone else is listening thinking, I can see lots of challenges in my own context. But a couple more things, and then we'll hear from Professor Youri, and then we'll hear from the rest of the participants on the call.
Yeah, the other thing is that we need a cloud space. More the data, more space is required. And then somebody has to take security of that cloud space. It requires a backup, as well as it requires the money to be paid for that space, it has to be maintained. The other thing is that you have to limit because it's very exhaustive, and all these forms could not be done in one day because ENT surgeon may see the patient on different day, speech therapist on different day, and you have to ensure that all the forms are uploaded, nothing is missed, it is not mixed up, and all those kind of issues are there, and fatigue is a major factor.
Right.
So possibility of fatigue and errors occur in the data entry, and of course the cost of maintenance of the whole system is high.
Thank you, Professor Kharbanda. Professor Youri, do you want to add a couple of challenges that you faced in your EMRFA in Bulgaria?
Yes, it was difficult to obtain a consensus between the different specialists to have the information standardized.
Right, and Professor Kharbanda talked about that long process of interdisciplinary work and getting that in India as well. Very good.
Because it's difficult to have this consensus even in the world, so we are not able to do it the most common. We have one now, and we are trying to adapt with the world, and also too many wishes for the IT specialists, and we have to stop in a moment because they will not be able to finish it. Now the new vision and the new design has shown a lot of technical difficulties, and it's still a problem because it's like to do a completely new system. And also the very important part is to motivate the specialist. If you want to motivate an orthodontist that is normally well paid to report data, it's not so easy to make them be so strict in their documentation. The surgical part is easy because we are not so many in our country to do this surgery, but orthodontics or speech therapy, they should apply a standardized way, and they are not always obliged to record the information. This is a big problem.
Right. Very helpful. Thanks, Professor Youri. Niti, we'll save the rest of the slide deck for a second. I think you've given us both lots to think about here. So now I'm going to, if you just, we'll go to the group. We want to make sure we always spend time hearing from everyone here. We've had a great snapshot into Professor Youri and Professor Kharbanda's work. What stands out for you in terms of thinking about your own context? Are there challenges you want to hear more about? Are there some things that you're trying in moving towards getting everybody on side on a similar database projects so that you can make good decisions about the care of your patients? What stands out? You can either type them in the chat, you can signal by putting your hand up or turning your camera on that you'd like to ask a question, and we'll spend the next 20 minutes in discussion. Carolina Rivera, the Costa Rica, what's your question or comment?
Hi, well, It's not a question, it's more as a comment. Here in Costa Rica, we started using a database that it's called Nuvismed. And I think the same as Youri, that every time you start using a program, you want to add more things, and you like see the need for even make the families part of the process. And I want that tool that Youri uses from Costa Rica. I said to him when we were in the Congress, I think it's a great tool. It simplifies a lot of process, even for you as transforming faces, for checking all the information. For us as a speech, we can like even upload videos and show the process to the parents. It's not only a tool for us as a professionals, more as a tool for the parents for showing all the process.
Excellent. Thank you, Helena. I think it's an excellent point. The idea that we typically, potentially in Cleft, have thought about EMRs as primarily an accountability tool, right? Maybe it's an accountability to donors. But Kathleen is pointing to how some of these EMRs, by what Professor Kharbanda and Professor Youri have built, is allowing actually the team to be accountable to themselves, and then potentially even going along the line of having parents being able to ask for accountability or seeing what that progress is. So we're moving beyond simply a one-way kind of giving information to justify the funds that we're spending to actually being a tool that can be very vital and simplify things, although we've heard a lot of complexity, but eventually simplify some of the work that's already happening by presenting it in one place. Excellent point, Catalina. Thank you. Who else? Comment or question? Professor Kharbanda, Professor Youri brought up the idea that sometimes if professionals think of their job primarily as patient treatment, getting to use computers or documenting things in a way is challenging. How have you found that in the Indian context?
It is challenging in the sense that doctors don't want to do the things which they think they should not do. They should only do patients. But in India, the good thing is that we have quite big number of people. We have young people who could assist you, and to hire data entry operator is not a difficult situation. They can be trained. They are pretty intelligent people. So, but however, the data entry operator will enter only what doctor will tell him. So the doctor has the desire to upload and update me. So that will come from within the professional. They need to be motivated to do that.
Right. So saying that this is sort of the way the world's going, we're moving in this direction, and the professionals really care about their craft and about their work. This is going to be part of core business going forward. Yes. It's not core business. Yeah. It's not just if you can do a good orthodontic treatment, but it's whether you can communicate those results in a way that the whole team can engage with.
Exactly. Exactly.
Alexis in Toronto, you have an interesting question. We heard lots about how these EMRs can develop laundry lists, as we say in English, just things more and more and more and more and more. Please, what's your question, Alexis?
I just wanted to know from both of their experiences, what is considered good enough? Because I know EMRs are quite expensive, and it's like once you got to a certain point, then you want more and you want more, and it keeps, the laundry list keep growing. So I just wanted to hear from you, what would you consider it's an optimum level that could be reached and that should be good enough for a center?
So how do you reach, Professor Youri, very quickly, and Professor Kharbanda, I'll start with Professor Youri.
Yeah.
How do you know when you've reached a level where you can say, we're going to live with this for a while, and then we'll think about making changes later?
Like we have a protocol that when you need full records, so there are ages defined that you need. For example, the first full record we suggest at 6 to 7 years, second full set of records at 13 years, another full set of records at 18 years. Now, this is in general, but like speech therapy may like to have records at different ages, and the surgeon would like to record the surgical part at different ages. So I think a consensus has to be arrived among all of us. But what I propose as a protocol is that 6 years, 13 years, 18 years, and then beyond 18 years. So when all the full records are there, they are the minimum records. because I think there has been already guidance on it. There are already guidelines available from ACPA that what should be recorded. So perhaps we need to develop a consensus, or rather consensus is there. We need to adopt it actually.
Thank you,
Yes.
Professor Kharbanda. So going to
Yeah.
international standards and saying, okay, this is our minimum. If we need other
Yes.
functionality, we'll keep talking about it, but let's establish what these minimums are.
Yes.
Professor
Yes.
Youri, how about you? I know that's been an ongoing challenge. How do you establish what's good enough for now and live with it and then fix it later?
In my opinion, we are already close to the end because we are trying to have the scores, trying to measure the number of surgeries and to try to have the optimum for the type of pathology that we have. So the goal is to optimize the treatment. It's not science pure. And if we obtain the data of a medium number of surgeries, medium number of treatment, that is to obtain a decent result, this is our goal. And we can go further always, but probably the technology will help us because the new in 10 years database it will be easier to handle. I'm not afraid of when the goal is to optimize the treatment, we are close to that.
Very helpful, Professor Youri. So I think in all of these systems, right, you'll always have some voices who are really thinking about it from a pure research perspective. You know, how do we optimize things for publication? I think Professor Youri, especially for this circle, is a really important point. What is a change that's actually going to lead to measurable improvement in patient outcomes, in the engagement of the family, and ability this treatment plan? And I think using that as a guide then helps you establish potentially what's good enough, and then what might emerge, as Youri mentions, in the future when technology gets better. So I think that keeping that sense of what actually is going to help our team give better care as a fundamental principle is very insightful. Thank you, Professor Youri. I'm going to read Dr. Mehendale's comment, and then Suraj, you're next. Is that okay? Great. So just in case you missed it, congratulations to both Professor Kharbanda, Professor Youri. I heard Felicity's computer's not working properly, but just letting us know how phenomenally important this work is, that it takes a lot of time, persistence, and hard work to develop these systems, and really that exhortation through this webinar and beyond. We need more systems, and I think hopefully we'll have some other examples from Ethiopia and other places where we know that there are in process some EMR systems being built. But thank you for that comment, Professor Dr. Mehendale. Suraj from Chennai.
Hi, good evening, Dr. Kharbanda. Nice to meet you here. Hello, Professor Youri. Great work done by you both. I want to connect with what Hugh finished in the last sentence, that how did you, because you both have more than 5 to 6 years of experience of handling database, did you have challenges with migrating your data from one portal to another portal with changes in technology? Did you lose data in that process? And did you lose hope in that process?
Hopefully not totally despair, but yes, either technologically, what happens when systems improve, when things change? Are you losing data? Are we worried about that, investing in something that will come to naught? Professor Kharbanda.
No, we did not lose hope, we did not lose data.
Neither.
We are not. In fact, we are going very strong. And in fact, I have a last slide which shows our future plans. I mean, that is the way to go. And yes, I think if we can get together, then we can do faster.
Very good. Thank you.
Sir, if you have to develop something, what is the cost which we need to budget in mind to maintain such a database and keep it running in an Indian context?
Listen, see, these type of things will not come from individual. They will only come from an organization. And for example, our data is available with NIC, National Informatics Center, which is a Government of India organization, and they have a huge cloud space available to them. And what we are trying to do is that we want to link each patient with his own national identity. So wherever he goes, his name, he forgets his name, but he has a national ID, Aadhaar card, which we call it. And if he can link with the Aadhaar card, When he's born, we link it at then and there, and for his life, that number doesn't change. So his data can be accessed worldwide anywhere. And he is the owner of the data, I am not the owner of his data. This data belongs to the patient. And that patient is the owner. And if a third doctor has to access on the database, it can be only accessed with his permission, which goes through an OTP. He gets an OTP, he shares the OTP, then doctor can access only for that time. So this is my future plan, where I am going ahead for.
Thank you. And some India-specific examples of how to tie in this information inside of government systems. And I think that that's one of the elements that's really exciting about the cleft space. We know that it's not just cleft that benefits from an interdisciplinary team-based approach. I'm very hopeful that in some of these elements that require a lot of investment, as Suraj was pointing to, but are also then become a model for how other teams can come together. That if we can demonstrate within cleft how an interdisciplinary approach is really supported by an EMR, that's something that can be adopted and replicated throughout the hospital, throughout the health system. And I think as Professor Kharbanda mentions, I mean, in an area where cleft in particular is funded so much by international organizations, I mean, I think that Professor Kharbanda's point is good. This is not about an individual team deciding to build something. Well, I mean, Professor Youri did that, but for the whole country. But there is that advantage of working with different funders to say, how can we make sure that we're from one another, and that if there are savings or ways of documenting this to the government or whoever the duty bearers are, that this allows us to move forward and not have these fears of losing data or going in the wrong direction. So very helpful. Dr. Shiva joined us a little bit late, but I think that he wanted just a quick comment again about privacy. In just 30 seconds or less, Professor Youri, how do we deal with this idea that patients' files might be compromised somehow? Youri, do you want to comment on privacy? You mentioned that off the top, but
in our country, as ARA was a partner, ARA is an NGO. The protection of data is done to ALA. So this is a way to guarantee the security of the privacy. And only another point is that we are the patients are registered here, but in the center, but they're choosing which specialists could have access to their data. The patients are choosing by clicking. So they give the permission. So there is a lot of logical ways to protect the data, and that people will trust in the privacy. So it's not only paper, but it's also a way to organize the system.
Very good. Niti, can we jump back? Professor Kharbanda mentioned there are hopes for the future, and in the last 2 minutes or so before we wrap up, I'd love to give both centers just a minute or so to talk about what they hope is the next steps for their EMR systems and how that matches. So why don't we start with Professor Kharbanda? What are your hopes for what's next for EMR in a minute or less?
I think I have already mentioned about it, that I am proposing that there should be one unique hospital ID or patient ID, and this ID should be linked with the national ID. And this national ID, if you have, then there is no need for duplication of data by the different specialists, because as of now, every surgeon, every speech therapist, every orthodontist is recording data in his own way and his own system. So this whole data is available at a national database, and once these two are linked, then you have a cleft ID, and this cleft ID of that patient is for his life. Everything about his cleft or related anomalies is recorded only in that. And when he is born, but he has become now 22 years, he has moved from his one town to another, but using this cleft tool or national database, he should be able to locate the nearest doctor. And when he goes to the nearest plastic surgeon, there is already alert system when he should do what. He goes to the doctor. Doctor can access his records, provided this OTP, which is called, you can say, a security system. And then doctor will access the record only for that period of time, as long as the patient wants it. And after that, it closes it. So this once you have this huge database, now we'll use artificial intelligence to know patient-related outcomes.
Very good.
And yeah, that is the main thing. So the number of cases, more the number of procedures, bigger the data, bigger the outcome accuracy in terms of AI. So ultimately, we will have to reach to the state of artificial intelligence telling us that, well, if you do surgery at 3 months, or you do surgery at 6 months, which one is better? And for which patient is better? Maybe patient is nutritionally not ready for surgery at 3 months. So better wait for 6 months.
All right.
So these kind of things will come up once we have the data.
Sure.
So it's a lifelong thing. It's not something which I can do in 1 year or 2 years. So,
fantastic. So not only we're going beyond that idea of files being lost, but you're actually talking about patients being able to move between treatment providers. As we know,
yes,
in cleft space, the idea that a surgeon retires and then all his files or her files are lost and they're we're getting around all this. So it's very exciting. Professor Youri, can you tell us just very briefly, 1 minute or less, what are some of your hopes for the future?
Yes, the future should be to keep this information, trying to optimize the treatment thanks to this workflow data that can be shared between specialists, and trying to optimize the excess or the insufficient treatment that is seen very often, and this related to the wish of the family also. It's clear that this could be improved also by training of parents and education of patients, because it's clear that if you have a heavy deformation, only surgery is impossible to obtain a good treatment protocol. So this is important to have the parent and the patient involved in the treatment.
I love it. So again, from Professor Kharbanda and Professor Youri, we're also talking, this is not just a tech thing. We're not just talking about the stuff that you paid admin to do in the back office to get money from NGOs. This is really about the idea of patients being in charge of their own trajectory, of being able to interact with multiple professionals, and that sense of ongoing treatment, so that every child makes a full rehabilitation, which again is that animating vision of the Circle of Cleft Professionals, every child having access to rehabilitative for as long as it takes to make that full inclusion into society. And I think that Professor Kharbanda and Professor Youri, through much hard work and lots of painstaking detail, are providing us a bit of a vision of what's coming. So thank you for your comments today. A huge appreciation to our guests. That was a lot of work, and even to go back and forth like that, we really forced them to carve down their slides to the bare minimum. So please do follow up with them if you have more questions or comments specifically about their particular tool. But we're also excited about coming up. We're not done. We've got one more webinar coming up in 2022. This is another element that's often overlooked. But to do good comprehensive cleft care, you need to be able to develop and sustain a team. And I think both Professor Youri and Professor Kharbanda have found that as well. Unless the team's engaged in this EMR process, it's going to fail, right? If your orthodontics is refusing to use it, or if the surgical data doesn't get transmitted to the SLP, I mean, how are you going to move forward? So I'm really excited to announce that Dr. Solomon Owuri-Yeboah from Ghana will be joining us very soon, 2 weeks. Don't miss it. It's our last one of 2022, and you'll want to invite your whole team to join in figuring out how do we develop and sustain that cleft team, which is at the center of what we're talking about today in the EMR as well. Thanks, everybody. We're so glad you joined us, and see you in 2 weeks.
I would like that, please, these comments which have come, they may please be saved and shared to us as a file.
For sure. Yes, we'll get.
I will appreciate that. I'm really wanting to go through each and every comment.
Perfect.
Please.
And we will be uploading this. As you see, there's the YouTube button there. So later this week, you'll be able to catch on the Circle of Cleft Professionals. And we know that many of our 700 members who couldn't make it right now because maybe they're in the surgery or in some sort of treatment plan, but they'll be joining in later and checking us out on YouTube. So again, huge thank you to everyone for your engagement on this topic, and especially to our two professionals, our experts, Professor Youri and Professor Kharbanda. Professionals are experts, Professor Youri.